will also have their video cameras turned off. And we are recording this evening for anyone who isn't able to make it this evening. As I was saying, video cameras will be turned off this evening, and presenters' video cameras as well, so that we can maximize your screen for viewing the slides that we have for you this evening. Also, I just wanted to let you know that attendee screen share is prohibited. All attendees are muted, and we'll cover the instructions on how to unmute yourself and raise your hand to participate. You can leave and rejoin the meeting at any time. So if for some reason you get knocked off, you'll be able to rejoin the meeting, unless of course you are removed for inappropriate behavior. And multiple opportunities for questions will be provided throughout the presentation. The presentation and additional materials are available on the project website, which is at a2gov.org/TC Longman-Fairview. And we do have a demographic survey that we would appreciate you participating in if you feel so inclined. Presenting this evening is myself, Cynthia Redinger. I am the project engineer for this project, and I'm one of our transportation engineers. Along with me this evening and helping out, we have Andrea Wright, who is our program facilitator and public engagement person. And we also have Raymond Hess, who is the transportation manager. A little bit about our agenda this evening. We have our Zoom technology overview, and then we'll go through some meeting norms. We're going to go through an overview of the traffic calming plan and process, and then we'll go through each of the devices, and then we will go ahead and talk about what the next steps are going to be. And as I said previously, there will be plenty of opportunity to ask questions throughout the meeting, but part of that is that we wanted to go through our Zoom meeting norms. So we endeavor to start on time and end on time to be respectful of your time. Participant screen sharing would result in removal from this meeting. We ask everyone to raise your hand to be recognized to talk. There will be one speaker at a time in the meeting. We ask that you move to a quiet place and silence any background sounds while you're speaking to the group. And we ask that you speak loudly and clearly so that everyone can hear you. We also ask that we want to give everyone an opportunity to speak before we have a repeat speaker. And we ask that you be respectful of others' ideas and perspectives. And we do also ask that you try to distinguish between I know facts and I think opinions. Any inappropriate written and/or verbal communication or language, including personal attacks and accusations, will result in an attendee being removed from the meeting. And I do want to give an opportunity if anyone has any additional thoughts on some meeting norms that we should cover this evening, please let us know. And we'll go over how you can get our attention throughout the meeting. So if you want to ask a question or share a comment and you're on the telephone this evening, you need to dial *9 to raise your hand. So that's *9 to raise your hand. You will be acknowledged by our presenters. You will be identified by the last 3 digits of your phone number. If you are, once you're identified, you'll need to unmute yourself so that you can speak, and you do that by selecting *6. So once again, that's *6 to unmute, and there are prompts that are given on the phone system as well when you're doing that. If you're joining us on the internet through Zoom, then if you want to raise your hand, there is an area at the bottom of your screen. It's highlighted on this slide the way it looks by a bright green box. And so you just press the raise hand button and your hand will stay raised until you've been acknowledged, and we lower your hand for you. or you can select to lower your hand yourself if your question has already been answered. Throughout the presentation, the questions and answer is available to you. You can access that by the Q&A at the bottom. And if you use this, you're able to send in questions to us. You can either allow yourself to be identified by the name you've identified yourself with for the meeting, or you can send those questions or comments in anonymously as well. Another thing that we'll be doing this evening is gathering feedback that we can quantify, and we do that through polling. So if you're on the computer, you will get during an active poll, it'll pop up, and as you can see in the blue box, you can submit your answer. So the example question that's here is, do you live in the designated project area? There are 2 responses, yes or no. You can select one and then press submit. And when the poll closes, the results will show for you. If you're on the telephone with us, then you can go ahead and press *9. The host will unmute you and identify you by those last 3 digits of your phone number, and you can verbally give us your answer to the poll. So phone polling is not anonymous. Everyone in the meeting will be able to hear your response. Okay, so we're going to launch our first poll this evening, just so that you have an opportunity to practice. And our first poll reads, where do you live in the designated project area? And our first opportunity of response is Fairview, and that's just the section from Dexter to Longman, Longman from Fairview to Jackson Place, and I do not live in the project area. So we'll go ahead and give you a few moments to fill that poll in. Okay, it looks like we have everyone there. So we can go ahead and end that poll. And the majority of folks with us this evening, it looks like we have are in the project area, and we have some folks who joined us from outside of the project area as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. And because our first meeting didn't have a lot of folks who were able to join us at the time, we wanted to give a little bit of a overview on our traffic calming process and where we are in that process, and just some information about it. So the traffic calming process starts with a resident initiated petition. And that petition defines a project area. That project area is defined by the petitioner. We do ask that petitioners reach out to us and discuss the project area with us before they submit, so we can give them any suggestions if we might have any. But ultimately, the petitioner selects the project area. Once that petition has been submitted and is reviewed and found to be qualifying, then we move on to our initial questionnaire. Meeting number 1, which is an orientation to the program and a workshop with some starter ideas. Meeting number 2, which we're in right now. Typically, this would be an on-site walking meeting. However, as we are still conducting the majority of our public engagement in a remote way, we're meeting on Zoom tonight. And that's why we also had the self-service walking tour that we provided the information for you on. And after this meeting, then the process proceeds to final polling. A little bit of information about the timeline we've gone through. So the initial petition was received in September of 2019. We started this process rolling in earnest in, and that's not December. The initial questionnaire was mailed not in December, but it was mailed earlier this year in August. We had the first meeting in September on September 9th, and here we are at our second meeting on October 14th. And after this meeting, we will be preparing and sending out that final poll, and that will be due back to the city on the 30th of November. A little bit more about our project area and our initial questionnaire summary. So as you can see, the blue line identifies where the speeding concerns are, and that also defines where our project area is. We heard that the intersection of Jackson Place and Longman was an important pedestrian crossing. We also heard that Fairview and Longman was an important pedestrian crossing, and we heard that Dexter and Fairview was also an important pedestrian crossing. In addition to those crossing concerns, the speeding concerns, we heard that there was a lot of failure to comply with the stop sign at Longman and Fairview. And based on all of that information, the city prepared some starter ideas, and based on that, the responses that we received in the last public meeting, we have brought those starter ideas forward into the preliminary plan that we're looking at this evening. So as you can see, this is an overall plan view. In a moment, we'll be going through the different devices individually, and we will be looking at them in a little bit closer detail. We have two types of devices that are part of this plan. Those are raised crosswalks and speed humps. And as you can see, we currently have 6 devices as part of the plan. A little bit of background information on what a raised crosswalk is. A raised crosswalk is, it's a vertical device that you drive over. So driving over it is what helps to slow traffic. This example right here is from Forest Avenue. And as shown in this example, the top where the crosswalk is the flat portion. The portion on either side of the crosswalk has that gentle parabolic ramping. And this example right here that is this Forest Avenue example, it is located at an intersection. It's not a mid-block location, in case anyone was wondering about that. Our second device, and this is a device from Wells Street, in this example, is our speed hump. So speed hump is very similar to a raised crosswalk. This is a vertical device that you drive over, and it's the parabolic ramping on either side of the device is the same profile as is used in the raised crosswalk, and it also has pavement markings as shown here. And as you can see by this example, you can park on top of the speed humps. You cannot park on top of the raised crosswalks because, of course, it's a crosswalk. All right, so our first device to discuss this evening is at the intersection of Longman and Jackson Place. And this is a raised crosswalk. And at this point in time, I would love to hear any questions or thoughts anyone has about this particular device. Okay, it looks like we have Lucy, and you can go ahead and yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Lucy Audet and I live at 125 Fairview Street. And I wasn't on the first meeting, but I appreciate a second meeting being held for those of us who couldn't make the first meeting. We were out of town. So my question is, and I did go and explore all the, you had suggested on your sheets, you know, different places we could see examples of these. And so I listened to the first meeting, and it was very helpful because I heard neighbors who live close to this, you know, talk about things that I had no clue were going on. That sounded like this was a significant, there were significant issues along with, and one of the major ones seemed to be speeding actually on Jackson Place. People taking the little firehouse cut through and ignoring, there used to be a stop sign, but there's no longer one. So as I was looking at devices in other neighborhoods, the thing that struck me that I thought would be helpful here was the raised intersection, which, as I understand it, has the effect of slowing traffic in all directions. I guess one question I have is, it seems like you could still have the sidewalk mapped out like you do, but it might address more fully the issues that neighbors raised at the first meeting.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. As you can see in the slide that's currently shown, the little dots are some of our structures that are in the right of way. So the blue is water, and the brown is belief storm sewer. So part of what we are looking at when we are developing these designs is, what other infrastructure do we need to be working around? And, you know, if we have a lot of other structures, we generally try to stay away from those structures because it can be difficult to maintain them if we have additional paving material on top of them. And also we have, you know, we have to be conscious of what's going on with our fire department and where our fire hydrants are and the area that they need to have to work with. So that's some of those factors are why we decided to go with a raised crosswalk here. Catherine, I see that you have your hand raised and you've been unmuted, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself and join us.
Hi.
Hello.
I put my question in the question and answer. It's, how high is the crosswalk in inches? Just so we have an idea what height we're looking at.
Yeah, so the highest point on any of these devices is 3 inches. So that's 3 inches from the baseline of your street. It's the same height if it's a raised crosswalk or if it's a speed hump. The full height section is just wider on a crosswalk. So they're really not that high. And if you're checking out other devices in the city, I recommend not driving over the devices on Iroquois because those ones are out of compliance with our typical design standard. All right, do we have any other questions? Okay, it looks like we have a question from Beth, who hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet. And you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. I think in regards to what Lucy was saying, some of the problems that are happening there could be solved with having that stop sign that apparently was knocked down years ago and not replaced, put back. And I was going to see if maybe putting that on Click It, Fix It would work, because I know that's not in your realm. But if we had that stop sign put back that used to be there, and the van was not parked in front of the other stop sign, that might help with some of the flying through that area. There's a white van that blocks the one coming west from Jackson Place. And then the stop sign going east from Jackson Place has apparently been knocked down and not replaced. So I was thinking maybe of putting it on Click It, Fix It, and that might help a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you for those thoughts. It's not that that is not part of our work area. It's just not part of the program. So stop signs are not something that gets managed as part of the traffic calming program. And so the request for a review of traffic control at that intersection has been documented, and it is something that staff is working on. We have at this point verified that there's never in any of the records that we have ever been a stop sign on the other side of that intersection. But what we are doing as staff is we will be taking a look at that intersection and what that traffic control should ultimately look like. Okay, does anyone else who has not spoken yet this evening have any kinds of questions? And I think, Catherine Kelly, I think you are a new voice, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Catherine?
Hi, I think they incorrectly unmuted me. I just got a notice. This is Lucy Audette. So.
Yes, Lucy, you're both able to unmute right now. But we did want to give Catherine a chance to speak first, as she hasn't had an opportunity yet. So Catherine, I see that you've unmuted yourself, and if you're speaking, I'm not hearing you yet. Okay, Catherine, we're still not hearing you. So if you're able, you might want to drop that question into the Q&A for us. We're going to go ahead and mute you again. I'd like to take a moment to say that we did get a comment from Dakota that he was glad to hear that the Iroquois the Iroquois humps are not what we're going to be expecting out here. Okay, so Lucy, if you want to go ahead, since it doesn't appear we have any other speakers who haven't spoken yet.
Sure, thank you. So two things. One is I don't know where this comment would fit, but it's kind of for the whole project. My understanding is that as you turn from Jackson Avenue, it's the signage, that announces this whole project. And I'm just wondering, looking at the map, where that would go. Would it go on, I don't know what you call it, the island there that's on Jackson, or would it be right at the entrance to Longman Lane?
Thank you for that question. That's a detail that will get determined in the field. So that's something that we'll determine in the field at a later date.
Okay, so that actually leads to my kind of overall comment about the project area. My sense is that when people see the signs, because as I've been driving around, it immediately alerts you to, oh boy, there's bumps here or whatever, that depending on where the signage will be, they will, great, won't go down Longman Lane. What they'll do is cut through Jackson Road and come down Fairview. And so, kind of an unintended consequence of the traffic calming on Longman Lane will be potentially traffic issues that now pop up on Fairview, the part that's not in the project area specifically. And so I wonder if you could address that concern. And I know I've talked to Andrea and she said, well, from the start, this wasn't in and it's nothing, but, we're a very small neighborhood and there are children on that other section of Fairview. And I really worry that not having this a more holistic project area is really going to have negative consequences for our neighbors who we all know and like and don't want them to be, impacted negatively by this.
Thanks for those questions, Lucy. The question of scope and parallel routes is a question that comes up in just about every traffic calming project that we do. And what I can tell you is that this process is approved by City Council. So we have to adhere to the process as it's approved. When a petitioner comes to us with a project area idea, we do have discussions with them about if there are any other, does that scope of project make sense? Will it be an effective project length? Are there any considerations that they should think about before submitting to us? And when a petitioner talks to us before they submit, we do have the opportunity to have those conversations. And if there's anyone who's on with us tonight who is outside of the project area on Fairview or inside the project area to the north and interested in the rest of Fairview, that would need to be a separate traffic calming petition. And I don't want to spend too much time discussing outside the project area so that we have enough time to get through and discuss everything that everyone wants to discuss about the project area this evening. I will also say that staff are willing to stay after this meeting to have discussions with anyone who's interested about that petitioning for that other area of Fairview. After this meeting has concluded, we're happy to stick around and have those discussions. But the project area is ultimately decided upon by the petitioner who is circulating the petition, and it is agreed to by the individuals who are signing the petition and requesting for the traffic calming program. And so we are invited into your neighborhood. And we come in response to that invitation. We have found in the past that if staff puts too much pressure on a neighborhood to change their project limits, then it doesn't go well for the neighborhood, and there are some problems that can happen. So that being said, we're happy to talk about it later. At this point in time, as we don't have any more questions about device number 1, I want to keep us moving so we have enough time to talk about all the devices. And we're going to go ahead and launch our poll about device number 1. So as you can see in the poll, we have, do you support device number 1, the raised crosswalk? There's a single choice for that. You can choose either yes or no. There's a second question here as well, and we've added that question in response to some of the conversation we've heard from you all this evening, and that is, do you support an alternative to device number 1 as a raised intersection? And that's a single choice, yes or no. You can respond to both of these questions. So if you like the raised crosswalk, but you don't like the raised intersection, you can put that in. If you like them both, if you don't like them both, you can go ahead and give us that feedback, and we'll leave that open for a few moments. And if anybody is confused, raise your hand and or drop something in the chat, and we can go ahead and answer some questions. Ken, I see that you have your hand raised. And so I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk. Since you have a question, go ahead, Ken.
I don't quite understand what the difference is between the raised crosswalk and the raised intersection.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so if we were to look at a raised intersection, I don't have it drawn. I can do a little bit of a drawing with an annotation here. Let me go ahead and get us some dark lines. So instead of the area just as it is right here, we would whoops, I can't draw straight with my mouse. Continue that way, and it would probably come this way and maybe come up here and come down here and come this way. So all of this blue area would then become raised. So you would have a ramp similar to the approaches on the raised crosswalk on each of the approaches to the intersection. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So
And
we'll
Cynthia,
go
if I may
ahead.
interject another thing. I just wanted to clarify, Catherine had asked a question if there are 2 Catherines online, and there are. So we'll be sure that when one of the Catherines raises their hand, we'll specify if it's Catherine Kelly or Catherine Dyer. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, let's see here. Catherine Kelly, it looks like you've got nope, sorry. Campus Chapel. You
Hi,
have a
this is
question?
Matt
Go ahead.
Ackerman. Hi, this is Matt Ackerman. I'm using my work account, so that's why it says Campus Chapel. Yeah, I had a question about the raised intersection. We didn't really get a chance to talk about that. I didn't realize there was going to be a poll question about that. I guess my concern about the raised intersection is the same concern that folks have had with device 6 on the other end. People turning left off of Jackson will have to slow down to come into that intersection. And sometimes it's relatively difficult to turn left off of Jackson anyway. So I'm a little concerned with where exactly the line would be on a raised intersection. Is that raised bump going to go all the way out to the edge of Jackson, or is it going to be closer to Jackson Place? Does that question make sense? I know you did your best to draw it with your mouse, and I understand that's a difficult thing to do, but can you clarify a little bit exactly where that device would start if we had a raised intersection?
Sure, and thank you for that question. So approximately, it would be approximately where I have the line drawn, right? It probably would not extend all the way out to Jackson Avenue. However, something that I will say now that is something to keep in mind as we move along to the other device as well. Left turns typically happen at a 15 to 20 mile per hour speed. They can, depending on geometrics, and you kind of have some geometrics here that might lead to faster turns because of the width of that opening at Jackson Place. You can see turns that are more like 25 miles per hour, but these devices are designed to be driven over at 25 miles per hour. So those turns and the device design are not in conflict. Catherine Kelly, let's go ahead and let you have an opportunity to ask your question quickly. And then we can close off our poll. You can go ahead and unmute Catherine Kelly. And Catherine, I see that you have unmuted yourself, but I'm still not hearing anything. Still not hearing anything. Okay, Catherine, why don't you go ahead and I'm not sure what's going on with your microphone. We want to make sure we get your questions. So if you can drop those, type those into the Q&A, that'll be helpful. And we're going to go ahead and end our poll.
And another option, Catherine, if you're having difficulty, you can always dial in, and that's another option for you as well.
Raymond, thank you for that reminder. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot of support for the raised crosswalk, and we have support for the raised intersection as well, but not quite as much. So I'm going to go ahead and I have to erase this or it shows up on every slide hereafter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close my annotation and we will move on to our next device. Oh, that was our questions and polling. Okay, device number 2. This is a speed hump. It is located up around 114 Longman. And at this point in time, like I said before, it's very similar to the raised crosswalk. It's just not as long. You've seen this marked out in the street. Does anyone have any questions about this device location? All right, Beth, go right ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I think the location's great. My only concern or question is there a sign further toward Jackson that more of a speed hump coming? Do you usually put a sign before the speed hump or?
We do, okay. Thank you for that question. We do not sign with large street signs, individual speed hump locations. We put signs at the ends of the project to let folks know that that they're entering a project area. So there are high visibility markings that are on the devices, and we do also use delineator posts to mark the locations where next to them it usually goes in the lawn extension so that our snow plows know where the devices are when it comes to plowing season, but we do not sign them individually. Okay, let's see here. Looks like we have another question from Lucy. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. So 2 quick questions. As I saw other project areas, some of them were white concrete with no markings, and then others were, asphalt with white markings. And I'm wondering if you could tell us like which to expect. And a second related question, and this is for the first speed bump, but it's really for all speed bumps, is how do bicycles get over this? Is there like on either side, a level area so that bikes can easily get by, or do bicycles also go over these? Are the humps the entire width of the street?
All right, thank you for those questions. So first of all, talking about materials, we will install traffic calming devices in either hot mix asphalt or concrete. And we make that choice depending on pricing mostly. And there is a little bit of a preference for concrete on some of the devices because we can maintain quality control a little better on those. but all of the devices will get marked with pavement markings. So I think while you were out doing your pavement marking tour or your traffic calming tour, and I absolutely love that you were able to get out and experience some of our other projects. We do have some projects that are currently being reconstructed as part of pavement resurfacing work this summer. And those devices will also get markings on them. They probably just haven't been installed by the pavement marking contractor to date. So regardless of the material, they will end up with pavement markings on them as well. The devices that we use are what are considered retrofit devices. So at the edge of the street, and if you've gone and seen these somewhere else, you'll see that they taper down to the gutter pan so that they're not hindering the flow of water and drainage on our streets. So some cyclists will choose to cycle closer to the edge of the road so that they aren't going over as much of the bump. But the bumps are very gentle. And what I have heard from other cyclists in the cycling community is that they generally don't consider these devices to be a hindrance. So do we have any other questions? Catherine Kelly, I see that you have your hand up. And you can go ahead and unmute. Catherine Kelly, I see that you have unmuted yourself. But we're still not hearing you. Okay. Catherine, I'm sorry that you're having so much difficulty with that this evening. I'm still going to encourage you to drop those questions in the chat. Seeing as we don't have any other questions, we're going to go ahead and launch the poll for this device. And this poll reads, device number 2, speed hump. Do you support device number 2? And you can choose yes or no. We'll give that just a moment longer. Okay, it looks like we have everyone who's voting, so we can go ahead and end that poll. Share the results. And it looks like 88% of those attending are in support of this device. Okay, so I have these question slides in, and I don't know why I added them because we're not using them. But anyways, moving on to device number 3. So this is another speed hump. It's located on the other side of the curve. In our initial questionnaire and in our first meeting, we heard lots of concerns about speeds around this curve on Longman. So it's a speed hump, just like the other speed hump, and the designs would be identical. Looks like we have a question from Lucy. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Lucy.
Okay, so sorry to be asking all these questions, but I am just wondering how many people are on the phone, or how many people are at the meeting? You know, if we were face to face, we would see each other, but we don't, and we didn't have a chance to introduce ourselves to except those who are asking questions. So if you could tell us, yeah, it wasn't really about device number 3. I apologize for being out of order with this question.
No, that's fine. It is an unfortunate part of the remote sessions is that we aren't able to see each other's faces. We have 9 attending this evening. Oh, no, it looks like we lost someone, so we're down to 8. Okay, so does anybody else have any questions about device number 3? Lucy, go ahead.
You know, as I was looking at it the other day, it seemed like it was almost in the driveway of the 124. And I'm just wondering if you could clarify, you know, where the intent was. Is it right up to the driveway itself?
Yeah, it's sure. Thank you for that question. It's not atypical for us to be placing devices adjacent to a driveway. We do locate them so that the taper does not start within the driveway. So it would be starting more at like the spring point where that curve in the drive opening finishes. Please keep in mind, this is a conceptual sketch. This is not a design document for construction. So we don't want to have a taper in someone's drive approach, but we typically end up placing these devices near driveways all the time, especially on a street like Longman where you have smaller parcels, so you have lots of driveways and trying to find spacing can be a little bit difficult. Since I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, I'm going to say let's go ahead and launch our poll for device number 3. And this is device number 3, speed hump. The question reads, do you support device number 3, speed hump? It's a single choice, yes or no. And everybody has really gotten the hang of these polls because we already have, I think we have answers from everyone already. There we go. All right. All attendees have responded, so we can go ahead and close that poll and share our results. So 75% of those in attendance support a speed hump at this location, and 25% do not support the speed hump at this location. All right, thank you for that. So we can go ahead and move on to device number 4. And this is another raised crosswalk. This raised crosswalk is located at the intersection of Fairview and Longman. And this device was proposed in response to the concerns that we heard about turning speeds, specifically from Fairview onto Longman. And it's also, it does have a bit of a pedestrian safety component to it, as it does raise those pedestrians when they're in the crosswalk, and giving them that elevated status makes them a little bit more visible. So does anybody have any questions about this particular location? All right, I do not see any questions, any hands raised, or any questions that have been submitted. So as such, let's go ahead and launch our poll. And this poll is for device 4, raised crosswalk. Do you support device 4, raised crosswalk? Please choose one, yes or no. Okay, it looks like all of our attendees have responded. So we can share our results. And we have 88% of our attendees this evening are in support of device number 4. Great. So moving on to device number 5. This is also a speed hump, and it is located near 133 Fairview. I'd like to open the floor to any questions that anyone might have about this device location. Okay. I'm not seeing any raised hands or any questions in the Q&A. So let's go ahead and launch our poll for device number 5. So device number 5, speed hump. Do you support device number 5, speed hump? Single choice, yes or no? All right, it looks like all of our attendees have responded. So we can go ahead and share those results. And we also have 88% of our attendees who are in support of device number 5. All righty. Thanks for that, guys. Moving on to device number 6. So I want to take a little bit of time with this device, and I want to talk about some of the concerns that we've heard up at this location. So concerns that we heard at this location that can be addressed by the traffic calming program and that this design is inspired to address include the fact that it's identified as an important pedestrian crossing. And as I said previously, raised crosswalks do help increase yielding at pedestrian crossings and raise awareness of the crossing and encourage drivers to look for pedestrians at those locations. We heard that the location has fast turning traffic from Dexter on to Fairview. And some concerns that we heard prior to this evening that cannot be addressed by this program include the amount of vehicular traffic on Dexter, and that at times it is difficult to exit Fairview. We've also heard that drivers are choosing speeds that are too fast on Dexter Avenue. We've heard concerns about drivers being impatient with other drivers, specifically drivers on Dexter being impatient with other drivers who are slowing to make left or right turns into Fairview. And we have heard that it's difficult to see drivers who are approaching Fairview from Maple and Dexter Ave. So I wanted to just talk about those things that are not addressed as part of the program, because I want you to understand that although they are not addressed as part of this traffic calming program, we as a transportation team, have heard these complaints and concerns, and we've made note of them, and we are working through them in other programs. So some of the work that we anticipate will happen out here, it's considerations that can be done through the lens of implementing A2 Moving Together, which is our new Vision Zero based transportation plan. And that's part of the city's master plan. And we have projects, we have dedicated funding and projects that are going to be moving forward. So looking at speeds on Dexter and those types of items, those are things that we can address through those types of programs. And another thing that I wanted to reiterate, it's a conversation we started to have earlier when we were talking about the potential of a raised intersection at Jackson Place and Longman. And that's the devices that we install are designed to be driven over at 25 miles per hour. So you can safely drive over these devices at 25 miles per hour. Most people will choose a slower speed, more like 20, 15 to 20. And that 15 to 20 is consistent with that left turning speed that one would expect to see from Dexter onto Fairview, and is below that right turning speed of 10 to 15 miles per hour that we would expect to see someone turning from Dexter onto Fairview. I know we've also heard some concerns about, and when I say we've heard some concerns, we have either been, the traffic calming team has either been contacted by email or on the telephone about some of these concerns. So we've heard concerns about the ability to exit Fairview onto Dexter. So the stop control will not be eliminated. You'll still have a requirement for stop control. So you'll be stopping prior to the crosswalk and then proceeding. And to maybe a way to think about it to help visualize what that would feel like, that parabolic shape on our raised crosswalk would not be, it wouldn't be more significant to overcome than a typical driveway approach between the sidewalk and the street. So that's just a way to think about it. So having gone through all that, I'm sure that there are lots of questions that you may have that we can work through. So I invite you to either drop a question in the Q&A or raise your hand to join the discussion. Lucy, I see that you have your hand up. You can go ahead and unmute.
Thanks, Cynthia. So I guess a couple of things. One, this device is very troubling to us. And I'm hoping that we can come up with an alternative that will address the issue. I mean, you talked about that there's other parts of the transportation department working on things, but a long-term master plan is long-term. And it seems to me that everything needs to be coordinated. As I went around and looked at all of the raised sidewalks, there wasn't one that I saw in Ann Arbor that went onto a busy arterial street like Dexter is. So that is very concerning. Don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't think any of our cars want to be guinea pigs on this. it really is the case. I know the city, when they redid Dexter a couple of years ago, lowered the street about 2 feet to help with that blind spot. And, you know, it's better than it was, but literally the cars are upon you before you can turn. And the reality is the stop sign is so far back that cars have to pull out to the very edge of that tree lawn. So you can kind of see what, you know, and try to see what's coming over the hill, so that the cars would be straddling this raised crosswalk at a minimum. So that is very concerning to me. And it would, I mean, literally, you have to gas it at some points when those cars are coming over the hill. So I think any obstruction that makes it more difficult would be extremely dangerous, and result in more car accidents or near misses. You know, the other thing is coming into the neighborhood. I know you said, you know, these are acceptable speeds, but it's scary enough now that knowing that you've got this thing that you have to get over would, you know, really be a nerve-wracking experience for all of the neighbors. So I think that needs to be taken into account. I would throw out as an alternative. So right now, this crosswalk is not hatched. It's 2 very light white lines. And I think we could probably get the same effect by, let's do those nice big hatch lines. Let's even do those, you know, those big arrows, everything but the raised. And then you have the sign there that says this neighborhood is a traffic calming area, so that you have all the ingredients there except the raised. So I think that would go 90% to doing the same thing, but would also keep us safe when we're in our vehicles.
All right, thank you, Lucy. So I took some notes during that, and I'm going to go ahead and unpack several of these items. The first thing that I want to address is the question of where you stop. So in Michigan, you're required to stop at the stop bar. Once you have stopped at the stop bar, you're required to verify that you do not have any pedestrians who are in the way. And then you are expected to pull forward to a point where you have clear distance. And the location that we measure that from is 14.5 feet back from the traveled way. So that's the first vehicular lane, because as you're approaching, you're stopping at the stop sign, you're looking for the pedestrians, you're looking for the cyclists, and you're able to pull forward just a little bit. And that's based on the guidance in the American Association of Standard Highway Transportation Officials, which stands for AASHTO, their geometric design of highways and streets guidelines. So that 14.5 feet back. So we do, where we're measuring it from is not where the stop bar is. It is that separate location where you are expected to stop at the stop bar and then move forward a little bit. So for practical purposes, that means the front of your car will be up on the speed hump, and that would mean that, or not the speed hump, the raised crosswalk, and you would be straddling that. As the devices are designed to be driven over at a speed of 25 miles per hour, we do not see that as a safety concern. The second thing I noted that you were asking about is that you haven't seen this done anywhere in the city. We have other projects where we have started with a raised crosswalk such as this. And I believe you're accurate that we don't have any of these that are currently at a location with a major street turning into a more minor street like that. But just because we haven't done it here in the city of Ann Arbor doesn't mean that it isn't done elsewhere. And I would point out that other cities like Portland, Seattle, and I think Boulder is doing this as well. They are incorporating this type of treatment into their standard design practices so that when you're turning off of a higher speed road onto a neighborhood street, you're encountering a raised crosswalk like this, and that helps you reacclimate to the fact that you're now on a lower speed facility. And I know this from some conference sessions I was in this summer, where, you know, practitioners were talking about their Vision Zero programs and how they were implementing, and this is a feature that several cities stated they were using. So it is something that gets used. And, you know, as I discussed, we're expecting turning speeds to be less than 25 currently, given the geometrics of the intersection and the design of the intersection. So that is not a concern that we have right now as staff and as practitioners. Another question that I noted that you were talking about is there anything else that we can do here? You mentioned pavement markings, and the pavement markings that are shown on this device at the crossing, those are called high visibility pavement markings. It is a standard practice for us now to be installing high visibility pavement markings for this type of a crosswalk. So, you know, if we're coming through and we're renewing those pavement markings, we would be bringing them up to a high visibility crosswalk anyways. What that helps bring awareness to the fact that there's a crossing there, but that does not help slow turning traffic. So turning into Fairview from Dexter, which was one of the concerns that we heard. As far as whether a different device could be used at this location, we were specifically requested for this project area by our fire marshal to not use any narrowing devices. So something that you may have seen somewhere else, such as a bump out, they have asked that we not include in this project area because they need the width for response operations. And as far as if we could bring the device back a little bit, we have a very short tangent as you can see here, between Dexter and where this curve starts, the tangent's really stopping about here. So if we don't put vertical devices such as this in a curve, because it's hard on axles and it's not a recommended practice. So we would be looking at something only in this tangent section, which at that point, that's getting too close to the crosswalk, and we wouldn't want to use a vertical device that could be obscuring the crosswalk and detracting from a driver paying attention to that crossing and pedestrians who might be approaching that crossing. So the location of device number 5, it would be about the closest that we would be looking at. So I hope I answered all of those questions. Does anyone have any other questions about this device?
Cynthia, if I may just interject, I had one point of clarification. When you were talking about the high visibility crosswalk and markings, I did just want to clarify for Ms. Audette's purposes that that's speaking to the crosswalk markings alone. So in other words, if there isn't support for this device, there's still an opportunity for us to put the crosswalk, those kind of dashed lines, what we call continental crosswalk, but that doesn't pertain to the triangles. The triangles are specific to the raised intersection. That's a standard that we have to follow called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And those arrows indicate a sort of vertical element. So I did just want to make that distinction. And Cynthia, hopefully I didn't misspeak there, but if this device doesn't get installed, there's still an opportunity for us to improve that crosswalk with those crosswalk lines, but that would not include those triangles that you see on the sketch.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. That is an important clarification to make, because the triangles, they're there to show the change in the pavement, right? It helps you visualize how the pavement is shifting there. Ken, I see that you have your hand up. You can go ahead and unmute and join us.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to kind of, I don't know, reiterate or emphasize some of the things that Lucy had already covered. I just kind of wanted to go back because there's a few other things. I'm just wondering, you had mentioned that these have been, this kind of a raised crosswalk has been placed in this particular type of intersection, not in Ann Arbor, but in other cities. But I just wonder, it seems like, I just wonder if this type of device has been placed in what we consider in the neighborhood to be a relatively dangerous intersection because of the difficulties turning in and out of it, because of the hill and the traffic coming over the hill. It just seems really to me to be a bad solution for what you're trying to accomplish, or what we're trying to accomplish, which is traffic calming, in that this kind of device is designed to slow people down, and to basically make people, drive slower. However, you're coming up to a stop sign. It seems like it's almost unnecessary to have this device because you're coming up to a stop sign anyway, one that, is probably never going to be run because of the inherent danger of traffic coming over the hill. That's just my supposition. But so just backing up a little bit, it really seems to me like the only real benefit of having a device there is to slow down speed, but really what you're saying earlier as more pertaining to a pedestrian crosswalk. And that could be accomplished, as Raymond just mentioned, by just putting the heavy dashes in. We don't need to worry. I don't think you'd need to worry really about the arrows. Not only does that help with the pedestrians to alert people to the fact that they're, should be looking for pedestrians because they have the heavy dashes in the intersection, but people turning in would also realize that they should be slowing down because of the dashes, which are more of a caution symbol for pedestrians. So what I'm trying to say, I should really get to the point, summarize that I don't think the raised crosswalk is really working, really needs to be here because of the coming from Fairview to Dexter. You've got the speed bump that's about 200 and some odd feet away. And then you have a stop sign that's going to take care of people going slow enough as they approach Dexter. I do think that one thing we haven't touched on is the effect that having a raised platform is going to be exacerbated in wintertime when there's accumulation of snow and ice in the street. And our street, Fairview, tends to get, when we have a heavy snow, it tends to be about 3 days before we see any plows, sometimes 2 if we're lucky. And during that time, this intersection gets really, really tricky with accumulations of snow that gets packed down into ice. And anything additional in terms of a raised platform, I think is going to make that worse. It's going to, exacerbate the problem of trying to make a turn out of Fairview, either right or left onto Dexter, if you're dealing with a raised platform that has snow and ice on it. And that's basically, that sort of sums up my concerns about the platform. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. I'm going to go ahead and allow Catherine Dyer to unmute yourself.
Okay. I just wanted to make the same point that Ken did, because I actually hadn't thought about the winter time when we talked about this at the first meeting, but once you brought that up, Ken, I thought this would be absolutely horrible, because that is almost undrivable as it is. And I do think that the paint would take care of the issue. I have friends come to my house, and when they have to make a left onto Fairview from Dexter going out of town, they say, wow, I don't know how you live here. That is a very difficult turn with that traffic coming over the hill. So they would not want to have to slow down to do that. And then trying to get out and turn left onto Dexter is always difficult to try and gauge whether the people coming over the hill are going, or if they're going fast enough. Once you've started out, they could already be coming at you, even though you went when it was clear. So you need all the help you can get out. My last comment is, we might be able to talk to Anthony, who lives in the house there on the corner, 2107, about lowering the last bit of his hedge so that we who are coming out of Fairview could see the pedestrians a little easier. But that would be a personal thing. I know it's not the city's job. That's it.
Okay. Thank you for adding those thoughts, Catherine. So at this point in the evening, what I want to say is that we staff have proposed this device in response to the comments that we received, but ultimately this program does, it's very responsive to what your community desires to see in your project. And we are here at your invitation. And so we are designing in response to, what we hear as feedback. And if your community ultimately chooses not to pursue a device at this location, we as staff, that's fine as far as like the design goes. So I think we should go ahead and move forward into polling for this device and get a quantifiable read of the room. So for this poll, we have device number 6, raised crosswalk. Do you support device number 6, raised crosswalk? Single choice, yes or no. Okay, so we have all of our participants have participated in the poll at this point. So we're going to go ahead and end that poll and share those results. And 79% of the attendees have not supported a device at this location. So what we as staff will do is we'll take those results, we'll combine those with the feedback that we have already received. But at this point, I think it's most likely that you will not see device number 6 in the final plan that comes out as part of the polling that will be mailed out to the project area. So does anyone have any additional questions? Lucy, you have been unmuted and you can feel free to unmute yourself and let us know what your thoughts are.
Okay, so I was wondering how the polling works. Like, are we going to be, as the whole project area, voting on, do we support the individual devices, or is it do you support the entire project as we're being presented?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So one of the changes that we made and in our last revision to the city council's last revision to the traffic calming program was that we kind of pushed the high burden of participation to the front end of the project, right? So that's why you're required to have such a high percentage of the project area sign off on the petition to go ahead and go through the project. So we have these 2 meetings where we get resident feedback, and in these meetings we're looking at devices on an individual basis, and we are talking about, does this work for the community? Does this not work for the community? Are there any adjustments that need to be made? And we tweak, we refine. At this point in time, we'll take the feedback that we have received back. We will finalize our design, and what comes out in the polling, you will be supporting or not supporting the project design as the whole thing. Does anyone have any other questions about the devices or this process? And if not about any of the devices, I can move on to process. Lucy, I see that you have your hand up again. You have another question? Go ahead.
Actually, it's a broad question. I mean, I think what we've identified as a neighborhood is that this intersection with Dexter and Fairview is really dangerous for all of us. And I know you said that there's a master plan that's being worked on. I guess I'm wondering if you have any advice to give us as a neighborhood of, like, what can we do? Who do we go to as a next step to make sure that now that we've identified we have a collective problem, how do we go and start working on it?
Sure. And as I stated earlier, just because something doesn't fall under this program, there are other ways that we are working on things. And I'm going to go ahead and let Raymond take this question, because as the unit manager, he's in a better position to answer it.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy, for the question. Yeah, Cynthia was right that we do have a newly adopted transportation plan. It's fresh off the presses. It was approved by council back in June. The good news is it is not sitting on the shelf collecting dust. We are actually going to City Council on Monday night to award a contract for an implementation strategy. So the idea here is that, we have this plan, it gives some high level policy direction, but how do we actually take that and put it into action? And so identified in that plan, there's a lot of really good material. If ever you want to look up the plan and see what's identified therein, you can just go to the city's website, which is a2gov.org, and then /vision0, and that'll take you right to the plan itself. And one of the things that I want to say in this space is that we're trying to do a systematic approach to how we're addressing concerns. And so the plan was developed with a data-driven mindset. We looked at crashes, we looked at volumes of traffic, we looked at all kinds of things, and we're really trying to hone in on kind of our problem areas first. And so there are corridors and intersections identified in that plan, which are called Tier 1 and Tier 2 corridors, which kind of give it heightened awareness. And if I'm not mistaken, Dexter is one of those corridors. So I think, we don't know exactly what the improvements might be along Dexter. I can't give you a definitive timeline for when those improvements will be made, but Dexter is on our radar, and it is kind of, kind of towards the top of the list. Now, I'm not going to say it's at the very top. I couldn't tell you which intersection or which corridor is right off the top of my head, but that's why we're going to hopefully get approval from council on Monday night to help us kind of go through that and identify it systematically. And I appreciate your concern. It is something that, we do take seriously. We log these concerns. It does help influence the work that we do. Obviously neighborhood support in changes to a corridor are welcome. And, quite frankly, I will call on all of you now that when there are proposed changes to Dexter to slow down traffic, to make things safer, we'd love to hear your voices in that discussion, because a lot of people are resistant to change as well. So I promise you the opportunity will be coming up to have discussions about Dexter and other roads in the community on how to make them safer, and look for those opportunities to be engaged and help influence those outcomes.
Hello, everyone. It's Andrea. So I am going to cover a little bit of next steps and answer a little bit about what polling looks like for you. I hope everyone can hear me. If you can't, raise your hand. I will talk louder. But anyway, I would like to thank you all. I know I've been kind of quiet this whole time, but for your feedback in the device. Like usual, we will use this feedback received to develop the final plan, which will be utilized in the final poll. The final poll will be posted electronically and mailed to all residents within the petitioned project area. If you prefer to fill out the poll electronically, you will have to wait until your unique ID, which will be on your mailed final poll, usually in the top right-hand corner, is received. If you do not record your unique ID on the submitted online electronic poll, then it won't be counted. I just wanted to clarify that. I know there's gonna be questions about this. There usually are. But once the results are finalized, and if there is enough support for the petitioned area, residents of Longman-Fairview, then we will go to the Transportation Commission in December. And if we receive their support, we will go to City Council and ask for their approval. So the next steps to clearly outline so everyone knows dates is November 1, the final polling card will be mailed to everyone in the project area. November 30th, it will be due back to City Hall, so postmarked. So you can drop it in the mail on the 30th as long as it is postmarked by the mail. If you want to drop it off at City Hall, that's fine. You can also submit it electronically. So I know that was a little confusing. Does anyone have questions about the final poll and how that works? All right, Ken, I think you've been unmuted, so
Yeah,
feel free to ask questions.
I just had kind of a question. I just had a question about whether you're sending out the postcards, whether you're taking for the polling households or individuals, as in a husband and a wife, or drivers in a particular, that live in a particular house. I just wondered if there are in any way that more than one person in a household can be represented since they're residents. And I just wondered how that polling is going to work in that regard.
Nope, that's a great question. I'm so glad that you asked it so that we can clarify it. So how this program was written and approved, it is one poll per household. So how that works is if there's two people in the house and you disagree, you have to come to some resolution to try and provide one poll, because the household only gets one. But if there is an owner and a resident who lives in and you have it's like a landlord, and then you have someone who rents from you, you both get a polling card. So the owner gets to poll and the renter gets to poll. So Ken, did I answer your question? Does that make sense? I think you're still unmuted. I think you can unmute yourself. I also want to cover really quickly that if two polling cards are received back, either one electronically or 2 electronically, or, one electronically, one mailed, they both do not count. Meaning, and that's all because of how the clerk's office does it. So when you vote in a primary or in a federal election, in an election in general, you can only vote once. So we do the same rules that the clerk's office does, and the clerk's office tallies our results. So we ask them to treat it like that as well. So Ken, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. I had another point that isn't really related to this, but I thought it was important. Earlier, the project website is listed as a2gov.org/TC Longman-Fairview. I tried that website several times today, and I was just told that it does not exist. I got an error message, and I couldn't reach the website through that address. And earlier in the program tonight, that address was given as the best one to use to get to anything you want to find out about this particular project. So I just wanted to point that out. You might want to check on that. But again, I was just trying to reach. I tried probably 3 or 4 times, double checked my spelling and everything, and I could not get in that way. I had to go into a different way through the engineering department.
Ken, I'm happy to try and help you if you want to give me a call tomorrow at work, because I know that I just tried it and I'm pretty confident. I tried it from my cell phone as well. So it's working for me, but I think that it might be something else on your end that I'm happy to try and troubleshoot with you, because I don't want to make it so that you can't access the polls or anything like that if you wanted to do it electronically.
Okay.
So I'm happy to work with you. Do you want my number for that? I can give it to you.
Sure.
Okay. And anyone else can take it down too. It's 734-794-6429. And that is, just so everyone knows, the traffic calming number. It might go straight to voicemail. If it does, I will call you back really quickly, usually.
And Andrea, if I may interject a thought as well, if ever you have difficulty with the direct URL, you can kind of breadcrumbs your way through there. So if you just go to the city's website, it sounds like you found this way through the engineering department. But if you go to a2gov.org/traffic calming, all one word, that will take you to the traffic calming landing page. And then just look for a link that says projects. When you click on that projects link, you'll see we have websites not just for this project, but for Fernwood, Glenwood, Rosedale, and Northside in addition to this project. And you can click on any of those just in case you have difficulty with the direct link. That's another way to navigate there.
Yeah, that's how I ended up getting in.
Great. Thank you, Ken. I think we have another question from Lucy.
Hi. Okay. Hi, Andrea.
Hi,
I
Lucy.
had a couple of questions about the polling or the voting. So, and I apologize if you said this and I just didn't catch it. So is it 50% or more of the residents in the project area that have to vote yes? Or is it 50% of the people that return their poll to the city? That's my first question.
So actually, it is greater than 50% of the people who send their card back or answer electronically have to be in favor of moving forward. So if we only receive 3 poll responses back, if 2 are in favor of moving forward, then the project moves forward to the Transportation Commission. That's how the program was approved by council.
Okay, that's helpful to know. The other thing is, is it going to be a postcard that we receive, or is it going to be an envelope?
Oh, perfect. So how it's going to be received is we will provide it in a letter, I can't remember what a standard letter is, but a standard letter so you will have a letter in there that explains this process, and then a polling card, and also the final project plan. There will also be a place where there's a QR code or a email address to reference, where to go to everything online as well if you would like to fill it out online. So it will all be in a nice little package mailed to everyone.
And if we do want to return it, you know, the old fashioned way, we'll have to provide like an envelope and postage, or can we drop it off at City Hall?
So you will have to provide postage and an envelope if you're mailing it back, or you can drop it off at City Hall. Either one's fine.
Okay, yeah, I was surprised as I was talking to a few of my neighbors, they don't have internet. So it's a real issue for people, you know, here in the neighborhood at least.
We understand. That's also why we provided a phone number. I did talk to a resident earlier today that I provided the login information. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before we all wrap up the meeting? I see that there is a question from Catherine Dyer. Sorry, I might have said your last name wrong. You have the floor.
Okay, just quick comment that I want to thank you for the bike lanes that you put on William and First. I'd like to work now, and I don't feel like I'm in danger, except on Dexter. I try to ride on the sidewalk because cars are going so fast. So if we can traffic calm Dexter, then I'll be able to stay in the bike lanes. But I do make sure I'm not around pedestrians. But I really think that's made a big improvement, though I have heard other people make comments like not enough people use it. Well, I see at peak hours that I'm with 9 other people that I can see on the street. So I think it's good. That's it.
Thank you. We always appreciate positive feedback, even if it's not in relation to this project. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. So any other questions related to traffic calming? I do not see any hands going up at this time. Alrighty, so this is the phone number that I just gave out in case anyone has questions. It is the traffic calming number. It usually does go to voicemail only because we are still currently telecommuting, but I check that regularly. I mean, I check that daily, and Cynthia also looks at it. Typically, people are getting phone calls back within an hour of me seeing it, but I can't guarantee that forever. So you will get a phone call back, usually within 2 business days. And then here's the email address. It's trafficcalming@a2gov.org. And the project website, which I just checked again, the TC Longman-Fairview, all one word. Maybe the dash was missing, but anyway, I'm happy to troubleshoot with anyone. And then we have a demographic survey. That is helpful to just information of who attended this meeting and stuff like that. I am also happy to put that in our mailed out communication as well when we do the final poll, and you can fill it out then. But that information is helpful when we try to make sure that we're reaching all types of people. And then also provides feedback. There's a question at the end that says, is there anything that we could do better? So yeah, we're happy to get that information. So now I'm going to open the floor to any other questions. I know Cynthia had mentioned that we would be happy to stay and talk about other questions outside of this traffic calming area. And we're happy to do that till about 8 because that was our meeting time end time. So is there any other questions people have in relation to something else?
Yeah, specifically, thanks, Andrea, for all of that. Specifically, if anyone has any questions regarding the other traffic calming on the other section of Fairview. But yeah, you have us until 8, so we're happy to have those types of discussions, or you're welcome to drop out as well. Catherine Dyer, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of was the rest of Fairview because of what came up when we talked about the Jackson Place entrance and people trying to bypass that if we don't put in the raised intersection there. So if if we don't end up putting in a raised intersection, and that was a little bit hard to suddenly be presented that and have to vote on it, then there would be maybe a need for one at the other where Jackson Place and Fairview come together, although that's not quite exactly a straight intersection, it's kind of curved. But something there as well would be helpful, even if it's the painted crosswalk, because lots of us are walking dogs. Almost every house on this street has a dog. And that is a tough place to cross, or at least it was when we had the big construction project going on Maple, but it can be on other times depending on things. So that's my concern, is that if we just do the crosswalk at Jackson Place, then Fairview will end up needing some help.
Yeah, and as I discussed earlier, this program is a resident-driven program. And one of the first things that we always say as part of our first traffic calming meeting is that we thank the community for inviting us into the community to work with them. Because that's really how this program works, is that community members are inviting us to come and work in partnership with them on these projects. So if there's an interest in pursuing traffic calming on that other section of Fairview, and I know we had some folks, at least early on in the meeting, who lived in that section and don't live in the actual project area for this particular project. If there are folks who are interested, then it's the same process. Then we start with a petition. So a petition would need to be circulated for that project area. It meets the basic requirements of our program, that it's paved street and it's between intersections, it's long enough, it's a local street, it's residential, all those things, those are basic criteria that are met. But then a petition would need to be circulated and received by the city to pursue traffic calming on that section of Fairview. And this program is a chronological program. So if we receive a petition from that section, then it will join the queue and we will process that project as in the order received.
Yeah, and Cynthia, if I may also give a little bit of additional insight on this. Catherine, I appreciate the suggestion, and it's not one that's lost on us. As a matter of fact, we have tried the approach that's being suggested on 2 other past petitions without success. That is to say that when a petition initially came to us, I think you heard from both Cynthia and Andrea that we sit down with the petitioner and kind of talk through the program a little bit and talk about the project boundaries. And in these other 2 instances, we said, boy, there sure is some, contiguous area here. Would you be interested in exploring an expansion of the traffic calming project area? And with some reluctance, they said yes. But then what ended up happening is the people who weren't part of the original petition were not supportive. Well, that's maybe an oversimplification, but those did not pass. And so we've been a little hesitant to expand or suggest expanding those areas because, as you heard from Cynthia and Andrea as well, this is really resident driven. So the people who really want to see these traffic calming measures installed are part of that initial signature and petition process. So there's already some upfront support. And when we pull in areas that perhaps weren't signatory to that process, it complicates things. It may draw in people who are maybe less supportive of it. So we've kind of, learned a lesson in that. And that's why we're trying to just really respect the original petitioners when they come to us. And like Cynthia said, we have no qualms about processing a separate petition on the other portion of Fairview. And quite frankly, we've even gotten some interest from folks who live on Warden because they walk through your neighborhood as well. They saw the signs, they saw the markings, and they said, huh, what's this? How do I get into the traffic calming program? So I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, they kind of get together as well and contemplate a petition. So yeah, you know, please don't be discouraged by the fact that we didn't do Fairview in its entirety. We are open to it if, you know, the residents who live along that section of Fairview are open to it.
Okay, it looks like we also have a question from Lucy.
Hi, less of a question, but more like to follow up on what Raymond was saying. And, you know, I generally have always supported traffic calming. I happen to be on Fairview and live on in the project area. But I mean, Fairview is a 2-block street. And so I just don't understand. I mean, the initial petitioner started in 2019. We didn't sign the petition, so we had no clue. Like, there was no way that if I had seen that, I would say, hey, why are we only doing 1 block? That's silly. You know, common sense says include the whole thing. There's going to be, you know, unintended consequences. So you know, it's troubling to me that that wasn't brought up and that wasn't rectified at the beginning, because what you're basically saying is 1 block, what, 20 houses, you get to have an impact, and it's going to be 3 years before we'll do anything about it. So I think, you know, it's just unfortunate. This, I think, is a unique situation, and it would have been helpful, or even now, to have a way to rectify it, because I think that's an outstanding problem that we really haven't addressed here.
Yeah, Lucy, thank you for that. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but again, this is kind of where we landed, and for the reasons that we gave. Actually, one of the examples I just cited was a 2-block section, very similar to Fairview, where it ended up not passing because for multiple reasons. But so I hear you. This is where we are in the process.
Okay, do we have any questions or concerns or comments or thoughts from any of our other participants? Well, seeing none, I want to thank you all again for inviting us into your neighborhood to work on traffic calming with you. And I especially want to thank you for taking time out of your evening to be involved in the process. As Andrea went through the next steps, you'll be hearing from us soon, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions that come up otherwise. And at this point, I think we will say good evening to you all.
Thank you, everybody.